Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I'm doing something a little different. This is how the lead balloon changed Mythbusters. I loved Mythbusters. I really, really liked that show. I thought it was so cool. I enjoyed everyone involved. I have tried to find it on various services since and have had limited success to try and like just rewatch some stuff, because I watched a lot of Mythbusters, but not as much as I would have liked to. So if anyone knows where I can like find Mythbusters now, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, because I want to watch them. But this time we're going to learn how lead balloon changed it forever. So I'm looking forward to this. I hope that y'all enjoyed this as well. And if you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and let me know in the comments below.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
One slate. There you go. Adam Savage in my cave, and I am taking questions today from tested patrons about Mythbusters, and I'm answering them here.
Cool.
In this form.
So I get an eclectic sort of
Today's question comes from Jeffrey McCullough,
way of answering questions.
who says
Lots of
his
answers.
favorite myth is lead balloon. Mine too. It's my favorite execution. Well, I can't even say favorite. You can't say which one of your kids is your favorite. This is just, it's the myths are like my kids. I can't choose one as a favorite. I'm glad lead balloon is your favorite. It's a really important myth for me. But what Jeffrey says is, I've heard you talk about it before, but the other day you mentioned the problems you had with the supplier's equipment failing the day you were to get the materials. This is true. So to just give you, and Jeffrey wants to know, are there other stories about lead balloon? In so many ways, lead balloon is a super important part of the biography of Mythbusters. The myth is that a lead balloon is something that's impossible. Hence the name of the band Led Zeppelin, who were told when they embarked upon their band that it would go over like a lead balloon, right? Like a.
See, like, yeah, I never necessarily thought it was like, in my head, I was like, oh, it's a lead balloon. That means it's, it'll fall. I just, I guess that means impossible. But like, it didn't, for whatever reason, the two things didn't necessarily seem mutually exclusive to me. Like, yeah, it's unlikely is sort of where my mentality of that particular phrase always was. And I feel like, you get told often enough as a kid that nothing's impossible, and then it's like, well, sure, lead balloon, unlikely. It didn't go well, but it didn't necessarily fail. It definitely, I don't know. Maybe I'm just hopelessly optimistic.
Concrete airplane, a lead balloon is supposed to be impossible. This is a perfectly testable proposition. So the question is not, can you make a balloon out of lead? Well, that is the first question. Then the question is, how big do you want to make it? So when we started to look at lead, I'm trying to work through how we built the narrative. The first thing we need is for the balloon to be airborne. Yeah.
Yes, and then stay there.
I can make a bag out of almost any sheet material.
Right.
And I can fill that bag with air. But when you say balloon, when you say lead balloon, I think the average person thinks of a balloon as something that's floating.
Yeah. So I definitely didn't necessarily think of something that rises. I thought of something that would be able to hover. Like as long as that works, as long as it can float a little, Pennywise is happy, and therefore so am I.
Not a bit of latex with some air captured in it. It has literally got some helium in it. So we were really clear that whatever balloon we made out of lead had to float. And that meant that we started doing this math of you get increased returns the bigger you get, because you are encompassing more air, more volume in the relationship between the surface area and the volume gets better and better and better for buoyancy the larger you go. The difficulty is lead is literally the material consistency or has the tensile strength of wet or damp toilet paper. I'm not joking.
Ugh.
It is
Wow.
one of the most volatile,
Dang.
delicate materials I have ever worked with. So we started doing math. How big can the balloon be? Then we also started discussing, like, what was our balloon going to look like? And Jamie was like, well, we could just make a long bag. And I pointed out, yeah, but that is, like, sure, you could make a bag, but can we try and make it as round as possible? And Jamie admitted, yeah, it should be. Round is better than a long tube.
Round is better. I agree.
That led to this whole, how do you make... Oh, man. How do you...
I love how enthusiastic he still is. Like, this is years after the fact, and he's still just, it's right there. He still is really enthusiastic. He's still really excited about it. I just love that. I love how invested. That's one of the reasons I loved Mythbusters so much, though, is because, like, could never, ever do what you're doing. I don't understand half of the concepts you talk about, but you're just so passionate about it. And it makes me so happy. And, like, I love the results, and it's like, and he does usually explain things in a way that I will eventually kind of get what's going on, even if I know I could never actually do it. But again, I love that he's still so passionate. I love that.
You use a material that does not want to be touched or handled very much at all and make a sphere in order to hold helium and turns out a little bit of air. We settled on building a cube, and we had to build a methodology to make that cube flat. So where we laid each piece one at a time and taped only the, oh man, there was so much planning into this. But you asked for stories that I hadn't told before. And one of them is that Jamie hated this story. He both loved this story and he hated this story. Part of the reason he hated it was because he knew how volatile and difficult rolled lead is to work with. And in the beginning, we were looking at the standard thickness you can get lead in, not the standard thickness, but the thinnest that is like regularly available is, I think, about 3 or 4 or 5 thousandths of an inch thick. Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Not much thinner than that's used for shielding and other types of processes. But 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch thick was actually way too thick for us.
Oh,
Our balloon was going to have to be like 20 feet in diameter, and that was never, ever, ever going to work. That's just too much to encompass. So then we started reaching out to companies to find out how thin they could make the lead. And our spec was we could make I think a 12-foot diameter balloon that was a cube with its edges like puffed out, using lead that was 0.001, 1,000th of an inch thick, about 40, about 5 thousandths of an inch thick, which is roughly 1/8 of a millimeter. There you go. Okay. That's the translation I was doing in my head.
All right, great.
And we had a company that promised to deliver us this stuff. And yeah, their equipment broke as they were trying to make it. So we showed up on a Tuesday ready to shoot the story, and it was like, the lead's not here because the equipment broke. We're going to have to wait several months or find another company to do it.
Months to get that fixed.
And then even then, as we were going, we were playing with the thicker lead, and it was so awful and seemed so impossible that Jamie kind of wiped the story from his head. He was like, I don't want to do this story. And then when the equipment broke,
he was like,
Jamie took it on himself to call around, and he found a company in Germany called Epstein Foils. And Epstein Foils made our lead in record time, and they beat our mark. We wanted 1,000th of an inch thick. They went 30% thinner than that.
Wow.
The lead they delivered to us was 0.0007 of an inch thick.
I love that Jamie was like originally the _1 hater of this, but as soon as like there was a roadblock, he was like, absolutely not. I have got this covered.
Yeah. 7 10,000ths of an inch. Yeah, 7/10 of 1,000th of an inch. It was crazy thin. And then when we got that stuff in and I started playing with it, that's when Jamie got that. I think I do remember the specific point where I was like, Jamie, look, this is totally possible. And there was no, inertia with his ability to change his mind. Heinemann was one of my favorite things about the man. He looked at it and was like, oh, yeah, no, we can do this, but we're going to have to be really careful. And I'm like, I know. And that led
Snap.
to what felt like a week of staring into the future. Each of us trying to figure out all the ways in which building this balloon could go wrong and
Right.
circumventing them. And in the end,
Measure twice, cut once.
we built up a set of contingencies for keeping this balloon from failing, that we used every single contingency, and the balloon did not fail. It successfully flew with helium. In fact,
I don't think I feel like I've seen the lead balloon one before, like so long ago, but like I didn't realize they used all their contingencies. It's been a minute.
was big enough where we
really
needed to
cool.
add some air because it was too buoyant. Yeah. And the reason it's such an important story for Mythbusters is because, well, every time we outline a story, we're going to film it and then it's going to go to the editors. And as you can imagine, the editors like to know what they're going to get. So
Yeah,
they would be
we
across
do.
our outline and they would see our outline of our story and they would make a rough plan and think, okay, this is going to be a B story. The A story was always the big episode story. The B story was the slightly smaller. The time split, 42 minutes. So it's usually like the A story was like a 25-minute story and the B story was a 15-minute story. Those ratios changed, but that was roughly it. So we submitted the outline to the editorial team about Lead Balloon, and they were like, great, this is going to be a nice B story. And then their first cut came in of just that story at 55 minutes long. And it was
Wow.
supposed to be like 15 minutes long.
Oh, yep. Dang.
Uh,
Sometimes things are just so interesting though. Like it's so hard to get things cut and like figure out, like I had to do a lot of cutting for stuff on like Patreon. Like it goes up on like for a lot of the anime stuff, it goes up on Patreon uncut, but then I have to cut it down a lot for YouTube. And so if I've got a video that's 65 minutes long, which happens when I film with Jess a lot, then I cut it down to like 40 minutes and it's like I don't really know what else everything else is kind of important, but then like copyrights come back and I'm like trying to get it cut down again to like 30 minutes or 25. It's like it's so difficult. All of it's important.
we cut it down. They cut it down. They did a beautiful job. The narration, I can't remember who was producing that one. It might have been Dan Tapster. Could have been Chris Williams. Hard to say. But in the end, that was the A story of the episode that we filmed. And what it told us was that we could build thrilling narratives doing pointless, absurd things. There's no explosions. There's no fire. Lead Balloon is literally 30 minutes of storytelling about two dudes trying to just, like, do something that's really hard to do and succeeding at it. And that's a great story.
It is.
It also was great because we were both super involved in the execution. And that changed, that some stories, one of us or the other wasn't completely plugged into. That happened a lot.
That makes
You can't
sense.
expect us to consider every story a home run. But that one was a home run for both Jamie and I. And I submit that that's also what made the narrative really exciting to watch, because you could tell that we were involved.
Yeah,
We were thrilled.
that is a big thing too. When it comes to doing anything, if you are not interested in something, whoever you're talking to is also not going to be interested in it. And that can be troubling. So that's one of the reasons too that on the channels, a lot of the time on like the Reacts channel, Kit does a lot of videos by like Kentucky Ballistics and like people who do a lot of gun content, because he's a lot more interested in it than I am. And so it's like it's less interesting to watch me react to something like that, because I'm just kind of like, all right, sure, point, gun, go, boom, like. I'm more interested in like medieval weaponry. So like I'll watch stuff about that and get really interested because I actually have some knowledge about that, and it's fun to like compare and contrast. So it's like, it is very, very true that the videos, or like anything you're talking about to anybody in, is they're more likely to be interested if you're interested. Not always. Sometimes what you're interested in is boring. At least to anyone who's not already interested in it. But there are ways, like if you're passionate enough, you can make someone be like completely invested in whatever it is you're talking about. I've gotten people hooked on various TV shows and stuff that way, just because I was like, no, it's true, this and this and this. I'm like, you know, they get interested enough that they now become interested in the show or the radio drama or the singer or whatever. And it's like, and then you've like indoctrinated them and they're yours now. But it's like, it's passion is there. You have to be interested in, you know, and it shows.
And that is another thing that we realized was, ooh, we can tell really cool stories about stuff that's pointless and absurd as long as we're totally into it. Because one of the most important takeaways I have from 15, actually now 18 years of television production is that the best stories are the one in which the person that story is happening to is really involved in the story. It sounds ridiculously simple when you say it like that. But think about your favorite reality hosts. Your favorite reality hosts are plugged right in, man. Richard Hammond. Yeah, Phil Keegan. Right? These are legends. They watching them go is exciting almost no matter what they're saying. I aspire to that kind of presentation. I've quoted this line from Raymond Chandler a whole bunch in talking about this, but he says, an adventure story would be no adventure if it did not happen to a person fit for adventure. And that, I submit, is one of the things we learned on Lead Balloon, is we learned that the kind of adventures that we found thrilling and thus could tell thrilling stories about were weirder and stranger than what seemed obvious at first glance. And that allowed us to go looking for weirder and more fun stories. That's how we did, good God, that's why we did Square Wheels, Smooth Ride. It's why we did the golf ball car. Both of those stories driven solely by interest from Jamie or I. Yeah, absolutely. The best stories to watch are going to be the ones in which the people they're happening to are actually interested in what's going on. Yeah. Again, I know that sounds ridiculously simple. It does sound simple, but it's obvious.
Not always.
But if you watch a lot of reality television, you might not see as much of that as you think you're
or
seeing.
Reaction channels.
So Lead Balloon was, people ask a lot about what our favorite stories are, our favorite myths, the most Excelsior this, the worst that. And it's impossible to choose, after all those years of making the show, any specific moments, but there are episodes or occurrences like Lead Balloon, Penny from the Empire State Building, stories like that, which altered forever the way I saw how to make the show and changed the way I thought about making the show. Those are the moments I remember. Those are the moments that stick with me. Thank you for that terrific question. Jeffrey, great. I appreciate it. Tested patrons, please keep submitting your questions and I will continue to answer them. Stay safe, and I will see you guys next time.
Au revoir. All right, that was really cool. So that was Tested with Adam Savage. So if y'all want to see more stuff like that, go ahead and let me know. Like, I would be interested in watching more Tested. I think that sounds really cool. I think he's a lot of fun. I've always liked his stuff. Like, again, I loved Mythbusters. If anyone can tell me, like, a solid place to go and watch it now, like, that would be awesome. I would really appreciate that. Yeah, let me know what I should look at next, and I'll see you in the next video.